Good morning, students. Now we continues this lecture, which is chapter is earthquake resisting design of building. Now, what is difference between this ordinary load versus earthquake load, right? So, in ordinary load design, it is expected that the structure will essentially remain elastic even during several most design loading, while it is a dead load or imposed load, wind load, etc. This type of load is called ordinary load, and because of this load, structure will not damage or not. These loads are not harmful, right? So in earthquake load, whereas in earthquake load it is expected that the structure could go in inelastic regime and suffer several damage during a major earthquake, right? So this is the basic difference between this ordinary load and earthquake load. Now next is a theory of strong column weak beam design, right? So, for a building to remain safe during earthquake shaking, columns should be stronger than the beams and the foundation should be stronger than the column. Further, connections between the beams and the columns and foundation should be strong enough to transfer the inertia forces, which is safety, to the ground. So here, as we all know that if a beam of any high-rise building fails, so it will only affect on the particular story, right? But if a column of a structure fails, that it will leads to a failure of the whole building, right? So this demands a strong column weak beam design. A building cannot collapse due to heavy earthquake, but it can due to weak design, right? So in figure number A, it represents weak column and strong beam design, which is not recommended. In figure B, strong column weak beam design here, and it is recommended, right? So we consider this first scenario, weak column strong beam design. Figure number C shows that the failure mode of weak column frame, right? If beams are strong and columns are weak, so is clearly see that this because of this column weak, right? Weakness in column, this whole structures will be bending or shaking while during this earthquake load. So, in multi-story reinforced concrete buildings, it is desirable to dissipate earthquake-induced energy by yielding of beams rather than the columns, right? So, the columns are mainly responsible from overall strength and stability of the structure, with several consequences of failure. So, furthermore, the columns are compression members, and axial compression reduces the ductility of reinforced concrete columns, thus necessitating more stringent confinement reinforcement. So therefore, it is preferable to control inelasticity in columns to the extent possible while dissipating most of the energy through yielding of the beam. So this theory is known as a strong column weak beam concept. Um, there are the other reason, the failure of the column can affect the stability of the whole building, but the failure of a beam causing localized effect. So we prefer this theory. And other is, in a weak column structure, plastic deformation is concentrated in a particular story, right? So relatively large ductility factors is required. So in both shear and flexural failure of a column, degradations are greater than those in the yielding of the beam. So we adopt this theory, strong column and weak beam design. In the very next, size of building, how size of building will affect during this earthquake load. So, building of a greater length or plan area may not respond to earthquakes in the way calculated. So, the building that are too long in span may be subjected to different earthquake movements simultaneously at the two ends. So, leading this results. As an alternate, such buildings can be broken into a number of separate square buildings as shown in figure, right? So In a tall buildings with large height to base size ratio, the horizontal movement of the floor during ground shaking is large. So the much taller buildings, the worst overturning effects on the earthquake, right? So in the building with large area like warehouses, the horizontal seismic forces can be excessive to be carried out by these columns and walls. So the figure number 1 shows the tall building with large height to the base ratio. In that case, horizontal movement of the floors during ground shaking is large. In figure number 1b, it shows that the short by a very long building. In that case, the damaging effects during earthquake shakings are many, right? Because it's a too long building. In the very next figure number 1c, it shows that the building with a large plan area like warehouses, in that case the horizontal seismic load can be excessive to be carried out by these columns and walls. Now going further, horizontal layout of a building. So figure shows that the simple plan shaped buildings do well during earthquake. So in that figure number 2 in 2a, uh, shows the building with a simple geometry in plan will perform well during earthquakes, right? So building with re-entrainment corners like U, V, H plus in plan corners, plan of the buildings are avoided by making these buildings in two parts. So it also described in figure number 2, which shows that re-entered corners shaped in plan have sustained significant damage during earthquake, like for example U, V, H and plus, right? So its corners are restrained. So that's why this building will damage during huge earthquake loads, right? So, suppose, for example, an L-shaped plan can be broken up to in these two regular plan shapes using a separation joint and this junction, right? So, which is shown in figure C. So, it shows that bad effects of interior corners in the plan of the building. This can be avoided by making this two building in two parts. If we divided the building in two parts provided by a separation joint, so it cannot be damaged as a huge, right? So plan is simple, but these columns and walls are not equally distributed in plan. So buildings with such features tend to twist during this earthquake shaking, right? So it is not too good to have building with this large plan aspect ratio, just like it is not too good have a building with large projection. So during this earthquake shaking, inertia force is mobilized in a building using usually at the floor level where the mass is large. So the inertia force then is distributed to a different lateral load resisting systems, right? So it's preferred to distribute this lateral inertia force to various lateral load resisting system, right? The columns and walls are not equally distributed in the building, tends to twist this during earthquake shaking. Next is vertical layout of a building. Right? So this earthquake force developed at different floor levels in a building need to be brought down along the height to the ground, right? So the any deviation or discontinuity in this load transfer path results in a poor performance of this building. So figure number 3a shows that the building with vertical setbacks with which cause a sudden jump in earthquake forces at the level of discontinuity, right? So figure number 3b shows that have fewer columns or walls in a particular story or with unusually tall story tends to damage or collapse, right? So many buildings with an open ground story intended for parking collapsed or were severely damaged in also Gujarat during 2000 Bhuj earthquake, right? So figure number 3c shows that the building on a slopey ground have unequal height columns along the slope, so it causes ill effects like twisting, damage in the short columns, right? Next, in figure number 3D, it shows that the building with columns that hang or float on beams at an intermediate story and do not go all the way to the foundation. So it creates some discontinuity in this load transfer path, right? At the last, figure number 3E, which shows that the building in which reinforced concrete walls do not go all the way to the ground but stop at the upper level. So these walls are liable to get severely damaged during this earthquake, right? So this all are shown this vertical layout of building. So we cannot build our building in a slopy ground or hanging or floating columns and such discontinuing structural member because of sudden deviation in a load transfer path along this height lead to poor performance of this building. So we keep these points in our mind while this design vertical layout of a building. Next is adjacent of building, which is also called pounding effect, right? So pounding can occur between this adjoining building due to horizontal vibration of these two buildings. So when these two buildings are too close to each other, it may pound on each other during strong shaking. With increase in a building height, this collision can be a greater problem. So when these two buildings heights do not match and the roof of this shorter building may pound or attack at this mid height of this column of the taller one, this is a very dangerous, which is shown in figure. So damage due to pounding may be minimized by providing proper separation between these two buildings by allying floors of this adjacent building, right? So uh, so at the end, we provide some separation joint between the building or provide some sufficient space between these two buildings so that it could not if one building design is weak and another one is strong, so because of this earthquake load, the taller building have a chance to pounding on this other short building, right? So because of this big design or tall building, it obviously during this earthquake load the building will be shaking. Because of the shaking effect, it pounding at this other building, so providing a separation joint or sufficient space between this building, so we can avoid this effect. So we stop this lecture here. If you have any doubt in this theory, so let me know. Thank you so much.